August.
Welcome everyone. Great to have you join ORT today for this webinar. For those of you who are new to ORT, we are an organization that supports entrepreneurs in the Jewish community through networking, mentorship, and training. If you would like to know more, please contact Brenna or myself. Today we have the privilege of hearing from Dawn Nathan-Jones and Lesley Waterkeyn. These dynamic ladies, whose reputation precedes them, are successful entrepreneurs and social change makers. They are the force behind Over the Rainbow, a social enterprise that empowers young entrepreneurs with the knowledge, skills, and connections that will enable them to succeed. During lockdown, they have written hope stories, insights of courage and inspiration in uncertain times. We are all looking forward to the book launch in August. A reminder to everyone to please keep your microphones on mute. Please feel free to post comments and questions in the chat box. Dawn and Les, thank you both for giving of your time and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Over to you, Dawn.
Lisa, thank you so much and welcome to everybody. And as I look down here, I see so many of my friends. So really it feels a little bit like being in my dining room with all my friends around me. So a huge welcome and thank you for giving us this time. And we know that time over the last couple of months has been probably our most valuable resource. And we really appreciate this time to share with you our latest project of our book, Hope Stories. And Les will share with you just now how this came about. But these stories are based on ordinary people doing extraordinary things of this unprecedented time of turmoil and uncertainty. And we all experienced the first 21 days where we were all so fearful. But over that time, both Les and myself and Sandy, our other partner, just came across the most unbelievable things that people were doing in the community, people that we'd never heard of. And we just felt this strong desire and need to share these stories. We found so many common threads throughout the many Zoom meetings that we conducted. And we actually had to cut it off at 27, and we found after we got to our 27th person, both of us were inundated with people saying, please can we be part of your book? So it became very clear to us that this was a chance for us to really escape this intensity. And we know that our lives have been turned upside down, and the overheating of the revolution really brought us to this point of lockdown. We've all felt over the last number of years this treadmill that just kept moving faster and faster. The momentum and the pace of how we were working was just not sustainable. So it was an opportunity for us to reconnect, to transform, to reset, and to rethink our lives and our purpose. And it's been so evident that many of us, although some just surviving, others are okay, but through these through this period of lockdown, we've realized that there are massive long-term impacts that we're going to have in our lives for many years to come, both mentally, physically, financially, and emotionally. It's really been a chance for so many people to either just survive or to thrive. And we chose to thrive and to use this as an opportunity. So we've entered this new world, the new norm, the new future, where many of our dreams and our aspirations have been put on hold, in many cases turned upside down. And our already fragile economy and businesses were exacerbated by COVID-19 virus. But before we share our journey, which Les will start with you, I'd like to backtrack 5 years ago in 2015. So in 2015, I was still the CEO of Imperial, had a huge responsibility and a large job. And the start of 2015, I didn't really have any decision or desire to actually leave the corporate world. We were so focused on our 2020 vision. Most listed companies on the JSE were actually encouraged to share with shareholders and all stakeholders our 2020 vision. And despite the ailing economy, despite our previous president, Gupta Gates, the state capture, the incredible stress on resources, water, electricity, I mean, despite all of those things that were happening around us, our relentless desire and our aggressive forecasting that 2020 was going to be the year, that we've been through the worst, it can't get any worse. We are going to take 2020 and we are just going to like show the world. And our company was not alone. I think everybody thought 2020, we over the worst and really we'd reached rock bottom and it was only uphill from there. We felt invincible, that these issues were small cracks in the economy and would pass. We felt that the future was going to be rosy, but little do we know. Then along came 2020. Over to you, Les.
And that was supposed to be 20 I mean, didn't we all enter this year saying, wow, this is 20 And I just remember all the New Year celebrations and this was it. And you know, as I reflect on Dawn saying, you know, back in 2015, it was the first time I did one of my sale of my company to 27% shares to Lesley. And, you know, we had this 5-year vision. And I actually looked at that document the other day again and just remembered, wow, you know, 2020 was when it was all supposed to come together. And in January this year, it all started off pretty well. And I must say, for us at Over the Rainbow, we really were looking at a bright year ahead of us. We'd been booked for the I'm an Entrepreneur event. There were 7 events around the country. We'd been also commissioned to do our course around the country by another brand. And we were smiling. It was just amazing. At the end of January, I remember I was at an EO conference in Prague and I took my husband with me. And we were sitting in the hotel room the one night and he's like, Les, there's this weird stuff going on in China. There's this virus. And I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, you know, don't let that bother us. Let's go out and enjoy Prague. And every night he was quite sort of attached to the TV and the news. And I sort of went to my conference and off we went. And I could feel that, you know, he started getting a little bit concerned, but me being, you know, sort of fearful entrepreneur that I am, I was like, oh, that's too far away. It would never come to us. And, you know, on the 14th of March, February, my son, I remember my son saying to me, Mommy, I bet you in the next, you know, 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to know somebody that's got this virus. I'm like, that's crazy. Anyway, 14th of March came. It was our first I'm an Entrepreneur event. Sandy and I flew up to Johannesburg and there were kind of rumors about, and we heard that the sponsor had actually pulled out and that they weren't going to be there on the day. We had a hand washing session in the beginning. We learned how to sanitizers and it was all, but everybody was very upbeat and very smiley and, you know, we weren't going to let this affect us. Well, it was not 9 days later that lockdown was upon us. And I think we just want to share our story. And, you know, there's quite a lot, there's 7 lessons that we're going to talk about. And at Over the Rainbow, it's all about empowering entrepreneurs with knowledge, as Lisa said earlier on. And we just hope that, you know, some part of these 7 lessons resonate with you. It possibly won't all resonate with you, but some of the stories that I'm going to show are my personal stories in my agency business, as well as the lessons that we learned from the 27 contributors that are in our book. So yeah, over to you, Dawn, to take us through the lessons.
So thank you. So I'm going to go through the 7 lessons, but just interesting. I'll never forget the day that dreaded Thursday. I was actually sitting having coffee with Sarah Feltman, and she was telling me, and we knew that there was this virus, but and there'd been 1 or 2 incidents in Cape Town. And I was having coffee with Sarah Feltman, and we were talking about her expanding her business and opening up into new markets. And she just didn't want to focus on the Jewish community. And it was just the most powerful lesson. I felt so good. We're having this great lesson. This year was our year. And I heard my phone beeping, beeping, beeping. And I happened to look down, and I saw from my son, who never messages me, Daniel sent me like 5 messages. Mom, it was 10:37 in the morning. Mom, come and fetch me from school immediately. Our school has got coronavirus. And I remember saying to Sarah, what? I dropped everything. I dashed to the school, and there on the island at Herzliya were all of these kids looking totally bewildered. They didn't quite know what had happened. So that was the first realization that hit home. And I think now the courage of the Herzliya principal and staff to actually take the initiative to close down the school was incredible. But I'd like to start, Les, if you can just put on the slide of the 7 lessons. So the 7 lessons that we learned from the 27 interviews, some one-man bands, some running small businesses, some running a little larger businesses. It really is a huge and diverse spectrum of different people. But they were incredibly powerful, these stories, and incredibly meaningful. There was so much heart. We didn't have one single person after we sent out the initial request who refused to be interviewed. Now, normally, if you're writing a book, Lisa and Brenna, you know how difficult it is to get people to commit to coming and doing a talk or to be present and to show up. But these people were just amazing. And hopefully we'll be able to spark some insight with you today on the impact that these 7 lessons may have on your lives and or your businesses. And hopefully there's some takeouts during this time of adversity, and hopefully some life-changing experiences that are still unfolding as we speak. I mean, we're certainly not out the woods, but we felt the desire, and I moved to Cape Town and gave up my corporate life to live a life of purpose and to give back and to pay it forward. And for the first year in Cape Town, I bumbled around doing different things. You know, WISO and ORT got me involved in a couple of projects, but we felt it really important that we documented what was happening, to leave a legacy for our children and our children's children, and to leave something. And all the things that happened to us, we've put in the book. And we felt that the people that we interviewed almost felt that the interview and sharing their story actually released a little bit of their own anxiety. And I just want to touch on 7, and I think it was Bashir that Les and I met, because 7 has always been a very important number for me. And we know that in Judaism, Shiva is an important number. The 7 weeks we've all experienced, the 7 weeks in isolation between Pesach and Shavuot. 7 on the 7th day, we rested, and we have our beautiful Shabbat that we look forward to. We know Shiva Brochas, and we know a bride goes around the groom 7 times under the chuppah. So 7 is a very significant number. So when I met Les, and she said, we've got this company called Over the Rainbow, and every single one of the colors of the rainbow, the 7 colors of the rainbow, represent and embody a different cycle in the lives of an entrepreneur. Every single one of these has a powerful meaning in terms of where you're at in your business cycle. And it really is a toolkit for growing small businesses and taking businesses to another level. So I knew that this was a great meeting, and I knew I had to be involved in it. So it was also no coincidence that so many of these messages really aligned to 7 key takeouts, which was quite bizarre. And we really have got people from so many different different types of businesses. And they really gave a very deep and meaningful reflection on what they did. And I just want to share with you that these, once again, are ordinary people, people like you and I. This is not the Johann Rupert's, Raymond Ackerman, Stephen Kossoff, Brian Joffeys of this world. These are normal people doing normal things. And I want you to understand that many of you probably know and have heard and seen like more like incredible things that have been done. But these were 27 short stories that we felt we needed to document for the future, for something for us to remember and learn by in the future. So Les will take you through the first, our first module, which is well, she'll tell you, I'm not giving too much away. So Les, over to you.
Thanks, Dawn. So just following on from what Dawn said, and you know, the rainbow in itself is also that symbol of hope. And that is where hope stories came from. And it was actually on lockdown that I went into a 21-day meditation. There was a meditation program that was going around, and on our first day I was added to this group, and I went on this meditation. And I think that almost settled my mind, and that's where this idea started manifesting, is when we, amongst all the chaos that there was, I'm sure that April feels like an absolute blur to me, to be honest. It was total war zone for so many companies. I was overwhelmed with Zoom meetings and, emergency meetings and exco meetings. It was a crazy, crazy time. But without that meditation and finding some peace, I don't think we would have come up with this idea of writing this book and, capturing this time. And, the contributors, as Dawn said, they are ordinary people that were just doing extraordinary things. And one of the threads that came out was passion. And it was really, these people were living the life they were meant to. If they loved food and had a restaurant, they would turn it into a soup kitchen. If they had a hotel or a guest house, it became a safe place for health workers. And all of the people that we interviewed throughout the book, were very passionate about what they were doing in their lives, and were passionate about their work. And that led to them, being able to survive and thrive and transform their businesses in any shape or form that they had to. They all had to change. I mean, we all had to make, massive changes. I remember in CWDI, there's a lot of sad stories around as well. We had to, unfortunately, retrench 15 of our staff. We have a big complement of staff that are in the events part of my business. But, because my one thing that I decided on lockdown and during April was save the business. No matter what happens, we've got to save this business. So because I'm passionate about what we do and the people, and we tried everything, but unfortunately the reality was we just couldn't keep everybody. But the golden thread that went through some of the entrepreneurs was they did whatever it took to, transform their businesses and, save whatever they could, and save the mothership, as it were. One of the most beautiful stories, and it was one of the final interviews that I did, was I actually ended up interviewing the director of the Hope Hospital, Dr. Anwar Carver. And it was the only in-person interview that I went, and sadly Dawn and Sandy couldn't make it, but there I went into, what was to me a event space, the CTICC, and just to interview this director of the hospital. And I must say it was probably one of the highlights of my career. He was passionate about helping people. He called himself the humble servant of the people. It was his opening line to me. It's the title of his story. And it is just the most beautiful story about how in 3 weeks, what that team did to turn the CTICC into this hospital of hope. And it is the most beautiful story. And at the end, he shows me a video of the first patient arriving. I almost got chills just watching, you know, A, his passion for what they had created, and B, you know, how all those blood, sweat, and tears had turned into this incredible hospital of hope. And it felt to me as I left the building that hope was so alive in that hospital. And their mantra was, whoever comes here is going to make it out alive. So, you know, hope is passion for what is possible. And it was so evident in the interviews that we did, and especially in Dr. Carver in the Hope Hospital that's right here on our doorstep.
Right, so the next chapter, thanks Les, the next chapter, we found incredible stories where credibility and purpose were the key and the essence that kept them alive, and gave them this incredible drive to transform and pivot themselves and their businesses. So these stories of credibility and purpose really resonated with me, because I have always believed personal branding is vital. You are only as good as your reputation, and you can spend 30 years building your reputation. You do one thing out of line, or you put one bad tweet out there, and your reputation is gone. So I think what was really important is that all of these people were very aware of their credibility. They were very aware of their own personal brand and the brand that they had built. And they were really determined that they would hold on to that. So we interviewed a number of companies, and a company in particular, a beautiful female entrepreneur who was making beautiful handbags. In fact, she was one of the people I interviewed and invested in Shark Tank. So I'm very close to her. But her dream was always to be to export these handbags, beautiful Afro chic handbags. And that was her dream. And over the last 2 years, she had spent time and effort going global. And at a point, I think just before lockdown, about 80% of her business was globally exporting these beautiful handmade, one of each handbags. And come lockdown, she had staff, she had a factory, she had her parents that she was supporting. But she knew that she had a beautiful brand, and she knew that she had a beautiful product, and that fashion was really her business. And she got in touch with the World Health Organization, and she was one of the first to come out with the 3-layered cloth mask, in fact, way longer than most. And what she did is she took all her fabric from her handbags that she couldn't make, and she turned that into fashionable masks. I mean, I've got thousands of them, so is Les, so if anyone wants a mask. But it was just such an incredible story, how she didn't lose her credibility. And she made sure that whatever she had been doing online on her e-commerce platform, she multiplied, she tripled. So if she was tweeting once a week about her handbags, she was now tweeting and 3 or 4 times a week. So that's an important lesson. You know, you've got to have an online platform, and particularly today, those of you who don't have an online platform, I think you really need to research that instantly, because, and if you're not on social media, best you get on social media and put yourself out there, put your brand out there. So that's what she did. And we had another engineer, an entrepreneurial engineers. I didn't know engineers could be entrepreneurial, but yes, we found this guy who'd run a rather large construction company. And again, I mean, he had no work, he had lots of staff to support. And the first thing that he thought about was, what skills do I have that I can use? And he started a very simple online platform to upskill construction workers, to get them all, you know, in terms of literacy and all of those great things. And he did that, and it wasn't an instant overnight success. But he also found that he needed to do something else because he couldn't sit at home. He had families, he had private school fees that he needed to pay. And he was very aware of his brand and his reputation. So what he did is he got PPE masks as well and actually sold them back into all the manufacturers that were working in the food industry and provided these PPE masks. So most of the businesses that we interviewed had learned and realized that digital transformation was going to make or break their success in the future. And also the power of creative thinking you know, whether it was this engineer upskilling the masses or another company that has been in operation for many years in Cape Town, you know, with a huge creative arts academy, and how they literally switched their large-scale intervention business into a platform, an online platform, and really broadened their scope from creativity to entrepreneurship to leadership to everything. That was also an incredible story, but also keeping their brand at, like, you know, keeping their brand intact and not losing sight of what they were best at doing. And another story that I want to share, beautiful story, a chemical engineer who we met about 2 years ago. She decided to give up her business as a chemical engineer, and she found a need in the market. So there's a traditional ginger beer that is used at traditional weddings and functions and funerals that's fermented. It's called Gamera, and it's known in most of the townships. And she created this beer that would last. It had a 3-month life shelf, and she was doing incredibly well. She was winning awards. Her product was out there. She was making big 5-liter cans because she was catering for mass markets. As you know, no events, no funerals, no weddings, nothing. So her business actually shut shop. And she thought about it and she said, I don't want to lose my brand and I want to still continue manufacturing ginger beer. Also, the fact that it's non-alcoholic obviously was on her side. But what she did is she investigated, and being a chemical engineer, how could she use her beer to actually build up the immune system and make people in these areas healthier. And she did that by actually phoning every single one of her clients. She phoned her customers and said, guys, we're worried about your health, but we're working on something. Would you be interested? We're going to make this incredible product, will help strengthen your immune system. And so, yeah, remarkable stories. And the lesson was clear that really branding is not about your logo. It's about the experience that you create with your customer. And branding through social media is key to keeping your product and business alive and out there. So whatever you are doing on social media at the moment, I urge you to double that, because we really need to put our brands and our businesses out there, but make it relevant. So it's so important that you show up and be the best version of yourself, and create trust and loyalty with your customers is absolutely vital. I mean, I know that I heard from people that I've been doing with business with forever, and they were just literally phoning to see how I was, if I was okay. And then there were those that you've been dealing with for many years who still haven't heard from. So if you're in business through this time of lockdown and through this time of uncertainty, make sure that you keep in touch with your customers as much as humanly possible. And then just to go on to the next slide, credibility is the art of accepting responsibility for your brand, for your people, for your reputation, and taking full accountability for your business. Thanks, Les, over to you.
Absolutely. So I think that leads us to, taking action. And I think, as Dawn alluded to, and everybody that we interviewed, what this was very, very, prominent and prevalent. They took action and they really backed themselves and did whatever it takes. And I mean, as there's that famous saying that all entrepreneurs, you sort of jump off the cliff and build a parachute on the way down. That became quite evident. And even in my CWDI business, you know, I think us entrepreneurs are wired a little bit differently, and this is not to take away from my incredible staff and the other people out there, but there was a sense of almost inertia that I felt within my team. You know, they were kind of deer in the headlights in the early days. Look, they've kicked themselves into action now, and you know, we've communicated and think people are feeling so much better. But in those early months, fear just really gripped my team, gripped a lot of people, but not with some of these entrepreneurs, and they really took action. And you know, these actions that we took, for example, included protecting our employees and our customers. We really needed to make sure that we had a plan to protect our business, especially our key employees and our customers. We needed to, you know, make sure that we saved money. We needed to make sure that we had enough money to see us through, because if we ran out of money, we would obviously, our business would fail. So we needed to stabilize our operations. We needed to plan for urgent cost savings. I'm sure that these are things that we've all had to take into consideration during this time. But you know, the entrepreneurs that we interviewed, they were, the one guy, Dustin, I remember, I mean, he is a true hustler. He just said, Les, I just got on the phone. And he said, I picked up that phone and I had those conversations. And I think it was really, you know, it's not about being shy and retiring at this time. It's really about putting yourself out there. And one of our other entrepreneurs also said, you know, CEOs, heads of businesses are now sitting at home. They've got a little bit more time. So people are listening. You just need to tune in. So the people that we interviewed were really taking action in every shape or form. They believed in themselves, they acted with confidence, and they did whatever it took. They built, our friends in Durban, the twin brothers built a company called Happy Hygiene. They had a business called Big Eye Branding. They were already in promotional items. They pivoted their entire business into a Happy Hygiene brand, and they built their e-commerce site in 4 days. They are absolutely rocketing at the moment, and I think in so much so that they've actually had interest from companies outside the country. But the title of their story is called Start Marching. They just started marching on day one. They took their team with them. They pivoted their business, and they really, you know, they really went full force into action. And as I say, just backed themselves. So yeah, they really found a reason. They never lost. Sorry, goodness gracious me. Sorry guys, I am so sorry. Gosh. Okay. Let me just go back there. It rings on my, even though it's on mute, it still rings on my computer. But they found a reason to hope, and they never lost sight of that hope. And you know, that action that they took then has really, really stood them in such good stead. Dawn.
Right, so my favorite mantra is love what you do and do what you love. And I've always lived by that, and I've always believed that you know, if you're not loving what you do, you must move on. And this chapter really showed us that the absolute love that these people had for their businesses led them into a new world, because they loved their businesses, but many of them were not as innovative. They were creative and they'd done the best, but it actually forced them to innovate. And we use the word prosper there, but none of them actually said, you know, we're doing this to make money. They said, we're doing this to survive. We're doing this because we love what we do. We so love our business. We built our business, and we're not prepared to give it up. So there was a deep sense of love for these, you know, a great sense of love, a deep sense of love for what they actually did. And none of them really wanted to move out into another space. They wanted to continue what they were doing and what they loved. And the first person we interviewed, a great guy, Wussy, who great entrepreneur. He was an academic and decided one day his girlfriend bought him for his birthday. Well, he didn't decide anything. She decided for him. She bought him a drill. Now, he was a qualified CA. What the hell does a qualified CA do with the drill? And he started like fooling around in the garage and started making things. He started, the first thing, he loves Nespresso coffee, and he didn't find anything that kept the coffee pods in. So he created this beautiful wooden, sustainable coffee pod holder. And then he created a wine holder and all these great products. When lockdown hit, I mean, all these beautiful decor products that, you know, the dream for any interior decorator, and they were all very practical, but actually he didn't have a business. And whilst his business was just reaching momentum, he was on Take-A-Lot, and he had got himself on to all these massive e-commerce sites. And so what did he do? He got into innovative mode and said, well, I've got to do something. I want to keep my wooden sustainable products. So he started to create laptop stands and cabinets and little desks, because he just saw that everyone was working from home. And many of us working from dining room tables was not conducive when you've got your kids running around and everything. So he totally pivoted and started creating office furniture and office decor, office stands for your home, and all these great cool things. So he never really lost touch, and he really has done incredibly well. But he said, that's not enough. I need to do something else. And he took augmented reality to another level, where he used the app, the augmented reality app, to actually allow the customer, who obviously couldn't go into the showroom or whatever, to see if that desk fitted the dimensions in this particular room, what was the best size. And it was amazing. And another story of a guy who had started a business in terms of sun lounges and outdoor furniture. Again, no business, but he had created this great business. He also decided, you know, leave the lounges and all these great things. No one wants that in lockdown. And he started making these really cool, trendy desks, and again, used augmented reality for people to actually see, because they couldn't go into the showroom, they couldn't touch and feel, but they could actually take the product. I mean, Les and I had this demonstration, and I was taking chairs and desks and walking around my house, putting them in different places and changing the color. I mean, it was absolutely mind-blowing. And his business really was about having showrooms. And I think he's realized now he doesn't actually need as many showrooms as before. So while we really had the full spectrum of innovative and out-the-box thinking, and this chapter deals with innovation. And we had a doctor who had been a very successful doctor, but decided to give up his practice and go into specializing in corporate wellness, you know, taking DNA tests of employees, eyesight tests, to making sure that your employees are healthy and well. And he is running a very successful business, and all of a sudden lockdown hit. And, you know, he didn't really want to go back into the medical profession, but he thought, how best can I use my medical experience to create value? And what he did, he in fact was the first person to bring drive-through testing facilities. And he used big parking lot areas and started, and I know Dischem started a bit later, but he was the first to bring drive-through testing. And I think little did we know at that stage that that was going to be like the biggest drive in this whole pandemic, was testing. And so he didn't lose sight of what of his core business, but he used it to actually add value, to help, to reach out, but to use his nurses and his staff. So he was able to keep all his staff. And in fact, I think he's had to employ more and more because we know the backlog in testing. So I think for all of these business, it's been the black swan theory. And we all know the black swan theory is in times of recession, devastation, pandemics, where we're surprised and these things often hit us from nowhere. And sometimes it forces us, well, many times it forces us to change. And in hindsight, these changes actually become the new norm and the new way that we run our business. So for me, I mean, I always talk about the fourth industrial revolution because technology fascinates me. And I've often spoken about, you know, do we know we're in the fourth industrial revolution with nanotechnology and gene editing and all of these things, big data, artificial intelligence. And I think what happened is this pandemic just thrust us into the world of the fourth industrial revolution, where I think a little bit like, sorry to use this terminology, it was a little bit about teenage sex, like teenage sex. You know, all the teenagers talk about it, but no one's doing anything about it. So that's the same with the fourth industrial revolution. Everyone talks about it, but people were like slow to get on the platform. You know, the whole world is about the Internet of Things, and the change in digital technology is moving at such a pace that we felt that in this chapter, these people had really embraced technology and innovation. And I think examples of that, if we remember in China over the SARS pandemic, you know, no one was out. I mean, it obviously hit China a lot worse than anywhere else in the world. And during the SARS pandemic, the biggest e-commerce platform still today in the world was born. That was Alibaba. And that was actually out of the SARS pandemic that they actually started this business. We know the Airbnb story after the 2008 global crisis, that there were all of a sudden, you know, hotels were too expensive. So many people had these big homes with empty rooms. They couldn't afford to pay the mortgage. So they started renting out rooms in their homes. And that's the start of Airbnb. Uber was another thing, also started straight after the 2008 global economic crisis. And so many companies, even if one goes back to the 1800s, you know, and the Long Depression, the Great Depression, the greatest companies in the world who are still alive today and doing great things, those companies reinvented themselves. So I think this chapter really takes businesses that have really changed and pivoted, and some amazing stories. So we hope that you read the book to get the, you know, full impact of the story. We're obviously not doing it justice because when you hear it from the people, it's just so different. So hope is the beacon which points to prosperity. And I do believe that many of these companies like Alibaba, who had to create this online platform because no one was going into shops. I mean, it's one of the most successful companies in the world. Well, we don't know now after the pandemic, but really it is important that I mention that it wasn't always about prosperity. In fact, no one mentioned making money here. They mentioned surviving and doing things differently.
Absolutely. So our next lesson was very much around, you know, thinking forward and adapting or dying. And, you know, I think, Dawn, you've definitely touched on it now, you know, in that last section. But I think what we learned here is that having an emotional attachment to your business wasn't really going to serve you. You really had to be agile. And, you know, as Dawn has mentioned, you know, so many of the stories were, you know, if you had a sewing machine, you made masks. I mean, Tamburai pivoted directly from making handbags to making masks. So you looked for the opportunities and then you adapted to those opportunities. You absolutely had to hone in on your skills. You had to think, okay, what am I good at and how can then I adapt to the current situation? And agility was everything. They needed to discover new ways of revenue, new ways of making money. They needed to adapt to this new normal. And the people that did it quickly, I think, are the ones that are going to also thrive and survive going forward. We needed to learn new skills. You know, even in my own event business, I've put all my entire team that are in my marketing team now have all been on digital training. They're all understanding the digital landscape much better. We will now absolutely adapt to this new digital world that we are living in, and not necessarily become a digital agency, but certainly be able to offer digital solutions far more than and it's something that we've been thinking about, funnily enough, probably for the last 2 to 3 years. And now, as Dawn says, it's been thrust upon us. So we need to learn new skills, and we need to get out of our comfort zones. And I think that was another thing. Sometimes we are so stuck in our comfort zones. And as Mark Sham, who runs Suits and Sneakers, he's also one of our contributors, he says, pain is a precursor for growth. And I just love that so much. And, he talks about, everything goes well until you get punched in the face. And I think COVID has done just that. COVID has been an absolute punch in the face. But how are we going to get up from that? How are we going to keep fighting? How are we going to then, go into the next round and think differently, get out of our comfort zones so that we can now, adapt to this new normal and thrive. And yeah, it is absolutely being able to see the light despite the darkness. And, this is so aptly said by Desmond Tutu. And, it is a hard time, and we're not for 1 minute saying, that we've also had it easy. It hasn't been easy. We've also had our personal challenges, having had 15 retrenchments. It's been hard, but, we've held on to this hope, and we've held on to, sort of this, whilst hope isn't a strategy, it's definitely has kept us going. So, whilst there is a lot of darkness about, we can't lose hope.
So onto courage, and I think for me, courage is such an important part of being successful. And unless you have courage to explore, to take risks, and allow yourself to be vulnerable, it's difficult to build a true trajectory in yourself and in your business. So I believe that one needs to walk inside your story and own it, and otherwise you're going to be walking outside your story, hustling and trying to create your own worthiness. For me, life is really about a collection of choices that we make every day, some small, some big. But you've really got to have the courage to make those decisions. And very often we tend to put off those courageous decisions that we need to make. So in this chapter, we really found that there were 2 types of mentality that people could choose. You could either be the victim and of shame, and like we feel so sorry and we pity ourselves, very much the victim mentality. Or you can be the victor, come out triumphant. And this chapter really deals with people who were courageous beyond and literally chose triumph over adversity. And I just want to share one story, and they were all incredibly humble people. I think throughout all the interviews, we found that humbleness, resilience, they were all strong characteristics amongst all of these. But I want to just give you just one story of a single mother of 4 who a couple of years ago had no money to put bread on the table, nothing. And she realized that unless she plants seedlings and made tomatoes and cauliflower and potatoes, they would not survive. She lives in the Cape Flats. And so what she produced were these little seedling boxes where she could go into the community and teach people to create sustainable food. And so she was creating these boxes. And just before lockdown, she was hit with a terrible tragedy. She lives in Lavender Hills, and her whole nursery, her whole business was broken into, and all her seedlings were stolen. Everything, her compost, every bit of stock, her computers. She actually basically did not have a business, and that happened just a few weeks before COVID. So she was already in dire straits. And when the pandemic hit, She didn't have a nursery to go to. So what she did is she made makeshift shelves in her dining room, in her bedroom, in her kitchen, and started planting seedlings. And she thought, I have to. Her key objective was not only put food on my family's table, but I've got to create people to think about how they can sustain themselves, because it's great that so many people are making food parcels and sandwiches, and we're creating so many soup kitchens. But, is this sustainable? I think we need to teach that. And here's this young girl, she's in her early 30s with 4 children, who has done the most incredible thing in the community. And she's teaching people how to create their own food. And we also spoke, in this chapter, I must just tell you, Les, I'm sure you'll agree, there were a lot of tears. And there were, in fact, those chapters, mainly females, there were many tears. Rensha cried. We also thought we wanted to go inside and speak to somebody in the heart of it. And we spoke to a doctor, Trotisker, who was in a COVID ward. And she tells the story of, she was actually going to leave the medical profession and also go into corporate wellness. And she put everything on hold. And she just said, I'm in there, I'm here. Use me, abuse me, I'm here. And she said, for the first 3 weeks, they were just preparing. And I know a lot of people say that, the hospitals weren't prepared, but she tells us how incredibly organized Trotisker was. And, the day that they got their first COVID patient, she said, all of them just stood there and they froze and they didn't know what to really do, because, should they breathe? Like she said, just this unbelievable fear that they felt. But she knew that she had the courage to actually be in there at the coalface and do what she could. Incredible story. She tells a story of like the one night when she lost 4 patients who passed away. Like she cried. She cried the whole way through the interview, and I could even cry now just telling you the story. And then our final story in this chapter, we felt it quite important to talk to somebody who is a survivor and has gone through the agony of losing their business. The story of Alison is incredible. I don't know if any of you follow her blog, but she was a highly successful events manager or events. She ran a business actually called Rainbow Events. And what happened with her is obviously her business just disappeared overnight. But she knew that from a logistics point of view, she could provide assistance to other businesses. And she took her whole logistics team and they moved into Ladles of Love and literally took over the whole operation. And she was loving it. She was like she says, she's never felt like happier in her life until she started to get sick, and she had some underlying conditions and feeling not great. Anyway, she unfortunately tested positive, and she was obviously on treatment, put in isolation. And she just thought, I need to change, because she said it was unbelievable and remarkable, the outpouring of sympathy, but also the outpouring of people who did not know how to deal with her, and literally the stigma that has been attached and created through this virus she needed to talk about. So she used her writing ability to create a blog every single day. She actually wrote and poured her heart out about how, she thought, she said she felt that her whole life she had this armor-plated vest on and she was bulletproof. Strong person, but she said she was all of a sudden vulnerable. Her emotions, she was physically weak, but she said her mind was okay. So she started writing this blog, and it's incredible to read her stories, but hopefully when you buy the book. But just to quote her, there's a quote at the end. She says, "Harness hope by trusting the process of life. try not to figure out your destination, as it is the journey that matters. Really a great example of triumph over adversity. Sorry, just the last one. So once you choose hope, I think it was very clearly demonstrated that anything is possible. Christopher Reeve, who we know, is another story. So it was a very emotional chapter in the book, where we had loads and loads of tissues when we actually spoke to these people. So over to you, Les.
Thank you, Dawn. Yeah, just remembering all those interviews is just, it just brings back just such happy memories as well. It took us 5 years to write our first book, and it took us basically a month to write this book. But from concept to completion, it will be 5 months exactly. So from 5 years to 5 months, we think is quite an achievement. So just finally, you know, going on to wisdom and making a difference. And this was absolutely evident throughout the entire book. You know, everybody wanted to make a difference. And, you know, Dawn, you've got the most beautiful saying, and I often steal it, and I'm going to do it again today. Dawn has this beautiful saying that, you know, we have 3 stages in our lives: learning, earning, and returning. Now, your learning stage is obviously, you know, from young until probably, you know, your early 30s. And then you go into your earning phase, and it's probably from your 30s to your early 50s. And then you go into the returning phase in your life. But what we found is so many of these businesses, you know, were actually fast tracking to that returning. There was so much of giving back. There was so much of love pouring out to soup kitchens, to, you know, the hospitals, to the people that were involved. It was really, really incredible. People really wanted to make a difference. And it reminds me of that serenity prayer, which is, you know, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think for all of us, and, you know, there just are some things that we can't change. And that's where I believe we get sucked into this negativity, you know, with the government, with this alcohol or cigarettes or whatever they can. We can't change those things right now. So we've really got to have that wisdom to know the difference. And yeah, I think we really, you know, that learning, earning, and returning. And we also learned the importance at this time of quiet time, of also meditation, of doing things to restore the balance. And, you know, while we speak about action and passion and courage and all those kind of things, you know, for me personally, who is somebody who does like to run fast and run hard, the quiet times have been the times that I've come up with the good ideas. I've been able to reflect. And in the midst of this crisis, it is important sometimes to just know when to stop and just be. Slow down, you know, be resilient and stay connected. And knowing others is wisdom, but knowing yourself and listening to yourself and listening to your body, and, you know, having that there's a global kind of movement towards wellness, and just knowing that is enlightenment. And I think I'm just going to, you know, sort of end on that note is, you know, try and understand yourself and know when just to sometimes stop, reflect, so that those good ideas that can come to you and that you can make it through this challenging time.
Les, thank you so much. And Dawn.
Sorry, I just want to finish off on the last quick slide. I know we're running out of time, but really this is just the conclusion here. The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And the pot of gold, I must just tell you, does not represent financial reward, but it's, you know, your health, your rich blessings. You know, the pot of gold can be, you know, having a grandchild, you know, having your mental wellness and physical wellness. So the pot of gold is really about, we can decide, and it depends on your mindset. And I think we've all gone from this fear mindset to a learning mindset. And we hope that, you know, we've encouraged you to you know, move forward to this growing mindset. And really, it really is about moving from this fear base, which I think many people are still in this fear base, and really kickstarting yourself into the new normal, into the new future. And, you know, I think it's important that we ask ourselves every single day, you know, how am I growing? What have I learned? How have I given my mind time? Am I giving my mind enough time to rest and relax? Because this treadmill that we were all on, I spoke about earlier, really it destroyed our minds, it destroyed us. And we needed this time to reflect on where we were going. So I hope that we've been able to share with you some of these really important insights of hope that we've been exposed to, and these incredible lessons, the 7 lessons. And our hope really lies in knowing that difficulties and chaos that we are facing will pass in time, you know, whether it's next year or whenever. But it is so important that we can become better versions of ourselves. I think the choice is in your hands. So thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you, Les and Dawn. We have run out of time, and I don't think there are any questions in the chat box now, but if anybody does have any questions, you can still put them in now if you do. But yeah, I just wanted to thank both of you, just first and foremost for your time this morning, which I know is precious, but also just for your encouraging and inspiring message this morning for all of us. And just wanted to, just to say that we are so excited after listening to your talk to actually purchase the book, which is going to be released on the 18th of August. So we will obviously, to our ORT base, we will send out the link to you when the book is released, and Dawn and Les have very generously and kindly offered that 10% of the proceeds of the books bought, if you use a certain code, for our ORT family, 10% of the proceeds will come back to ORT. So we are very grateful to you for that. Thank you. It's an amazing, amazing offer. So we definitely look forward to it, and we'll be promoting it on the 18th of August. And just lastly, ORT SA Cape will be running an incredible initiative for Mandela Day this weekend, where it's a food relief initiative, and it costs only 200 Rand to feed a family for a week. So we will also be sending out the link to donate for that. And we do ask any of you, if you can support our organization, please do so generously. Thank you. So just, Lisa, I don't know if I've left anything else out, but thank you all for being with us this morning.
Thanks, Bren. No, that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Okay.